Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. This is part 2 about the two-part episode, The Conflict. In this case, I'm going to be sharing with you direct remarks from our director, Ralph Senensky. If you're enjoying these, please do like and subscribe. So I reached out to Ralph Senensky and asked him some specific questions I had from watching the episode, and then just for any of his recollections about the filming. So here's what he had to say. He said, "The Conflict was the 4th episode of The Waltons that I directed. It was to be the opening show for their 3rd season, and it was to be a 2-hour epic. I'm not sure, but I think it was the first 2-hour episode for the series. It was not. At the end of season 1, we did the Easter story, which was a 2-hour or 2-part episode. So it might have been the first 2-hour one that Ralph Senensky directed." But he says, "The Conflict, being a 2-hour show based on the usual assigning of 6.5 days filming per episode, should have had at least 13 days for the shooting schedule. But Hollywood was facing the possibility of an industry strike." I forget whether it was writers or actors. I don't remember either, but both sometimes went on strike. "I was scheduled to start filming on a Friday, which allowed just 12 days before the possible strike to complete the film. The following week, we were to film for 6 days on location in Frazier Park, an area 90 miles north of Los Angeles. Location shooting allowed for a 6-day week. So yes, usually we only shot Monday through Friday, and then we had weekends off. But as Ralph mentions here, because they were going to spend 6 days on location, and they were on location, they could shoot on the 6th day. Then after that, they would return to the studio for an additional 5-day week of filming before the possible closing down because of a strike. But one more snag hit the fan. The production filming ahead of me was running behind. It also had to be finished before the possible strike. So Ralph says I ended up beginning my show at 2 p.m. on Friday, which meant I had to complete this epic in 11.5 days, which is just a monumental task, especially when you're talking about locations with all the equipment that has to move, all the actors that have to move, when you're working in locations that are not pre-lit. Like when we worked on the soundstage, lights were rigged all over those sets already, so they didn't have to come in and start from scratch. When we went out to locations, they had to haul all that equipment in, set everything up, so it just took longer. And then you have to get everything covered, all of the close-ups, all the long shots, everything else. There was action involved in this episode. So it was quite remarkable that he was able to pull this off in such a tight time frame. He says that Friday half day, we filmed the scene with Martha, Corinne, and Grandma seated in the back of the moving truck on the back lot, but the truck wasn't moving. We had Michael Learned, Olivia, seated in the truck, her head blocking through the truck's rear window, the fact that the truck was standing still and was being shaken to simulate it was moving. Typically, when there were shots like this, it would be a mix of process, because when they showed inside the cab, it was typically a process shot. They were using film of the area, and the car was stationary. In this case, they did not. They actually shot the back of the truck, but because you couldn't actually see it was moving, because all you saw was Ellen and Beulah Bondi sitting back there, and you could not see beyond the sides of them. So all you could see was the back of the inside of the cab where Olivia was supposed to be sitting. So you saw the back of her head. So Ralph says there were no process shots in the family's drive up to Martha Corinne's. Both the cab and the group in the back of the truck were filmed from a moving camera car. And it was all filmed at Franklin Canyon, which was one of our other locations. This is until the place where they saw the crews working on the road in the episode, when they hit the point where there are men blocking the road. And he says that was filmed on the Warner Brothers backlot, likely in the jungle. And that likely was because if they shot just that one section on location, they would have had to take all that equipment and all of those extras and all of those extra actors, and that would have also been much more costly, so they figured out how to shoot that on the back lot. Then he says what looked like stock footage of large equipment moving mounds of dirt was stock footage. And what was interesting was that Ralph, had filmed some of those shots 2 years before for the FBI episode Game of Terror, which had guest starred Richard Thomas. So Small world. This was a question that I asked Ralph because I get asked about the cabin up on the top of the mountain, the headstones, things like that, the old homestead, whether those were existing or sets. So I asked Ralph about that, and he said Martha Corinne's homestead in Fraser Park was a set designed by Ed Graves, who was our art director, and it was erected on the site up in Fraser Park. The interiors of the homestead were filmed on sets at the studio. I have also been asked about Beulah, Bondi, and Will Geer because evidently they were on different sides of those Senate hearings back in the 1950s when Will Geer was blacklisted. I do not know the history of Beulah, Bondi, some of you may, but I had been asked if there was tension between Will and Beulah. So I asked Ralph. I never noticed anything, but I wasn't looking for it. I asked Ralph Senensky, and he said, I did not know at the time I filmed of the past history of Will Geer, Beulah, Bondi, and the Senate hearings. There was absolutely no tension between them on the set. Will was the total professional, as he always was. And he says, we completed the 6 days of filming in Fraser Park thanks to spectacular efforts by Russell Meddy, that was our cinematographer, who had a long history in Hollywood and worked on numerous major movies and had been nominated for Oscars. I believe he even won an Oscar for cinematography and was responsible as a cinematographer on that fabulous opening sequence of Touch of Evil, where it's one long shot and is just a part of filmmaking history when people study filmmaking. So he says, thanks to the spectacular efforts of Russell Meddy and his camera crew and the great performances of Beulah Bondi, Richard Thomas, Will Geer, and Richard Hatch. In fact, every one of the actors. So thank you for that, Ralph, and it would have been quite a task. Ralph also shared this story with me. He said, Judy, I wonder if you remember when we were filming the scene at Fraser Park where you, Mary Ellen, Aaron, and Elizabeth were out in the woods picking berries, a group of feisty pigs appeared. The script called for the 3 girls to be frightened and climb up onto a very large tree while the pigs gathered at the base of the tree. Yes, I remember that. The morning we prepared to shoot the sequence, Judy informed me that her character wouldn't behave as written. She wouldn't be frightened, wouldn't run away and climb a tree. I don't remember saying that or doing that, but I can see why I would have, because even when I watched it again, I went, well, that's interesting. Seems a little out of character for Mary Ellen. But clearly at the time, I also wondered about that. So he says that for Ralph, I had already been down that road on the set of The Gift the year before, another Walton episode, before of the producer's objection to script being rewritten on set. But I did understand and appreciate Mary Ellen's reluctance about the scene as written. This was only my 4th show for the series. Judy had filmed the 2-hour movie in 2 seasons of the series. Fortunately, producer Robert Jacks was at the location with us, so I sent out an SOS, and he arrived at our filming site. I don't know what happened at their meeting, but Judy returned to our location like a true professional, and we filmed a delightful scene. I don't remember what that conversation was either. It could have been anything from him being I loved about Bob Jacks. He was easy to work with. He was a wonderful producer. So he probably appealed to me, and I went, yeah, okay. I understand, we have to do it. Or he might have just said, come on, Judy, we're short on time. We got to get this done, and we can't rewrite. Either way, I clearly understood the position, and I made my appeal, and it wasn't going to happen. So then it was time to just do the job. But I did apologize to Ralph Senensky for being at all difficult or challenging, if that's the way it seemed to him. Sometimes you can ask those questions, but you will not always get the answer you're hoping for. And Ralph shared this one final memory about this episode. By the time I arrived to direct the Waltons in 1973, scripts written for television had changed, and not for the best, from the quality of scripts being filmed in the 1960s. I considered the Waltons to be an oasis in a desert of mediocrity, and Earl Hamner was a joy to work with. On my very first assignment, The Chicken Thief, I went to him not with criticism of a scene in the script, but with a suggestion for an added scene to add closure to that scene. The next day, Earl gave me the scene he had written, and it was a sheer joy to read and to film. On the conflict, I had a more serious reservation. The ending of that script had the government allowing Martha Corinne to remain in her home in the mountains. I went to Earl and told him my concerns. In real life, the government's planned highway through the mountains would not have been changed to accommodate the wishes of this elderly mountain woman. Secondly, having Martha Corinne being forced to leave her homestead would be not only more real, it would be more dramatic. Earl personally rewrote the entire closing of the script without screen credit. From the time the friendly emissary returned to tell her the government had refused her request, and the final scene between Martha Corinne and John Boy, where she is sweeping to leave the house as clean as it was the day she moved in. That scene, incidentally, can be seen on YouTube. It is pure poetry, both in Earl's lovely words and in Beulah Bondi's awesome performance. I want to thank Ralph Senensky once again for sending me on very short notice all these wonderful memories of his from the filming of The Conflict. It really helped me to understand the episode better, and it is very much appreciated. That's what I have for you for this segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons, Part 2 of The Conflict. I'll see you next time for more Behind the Scenes of the Waltons and more Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.